Hello and welcome to the review summary of Transformers Devastation for NextPowerUp. Obviously, I have decided to do the video formats a little bit differently following the last few. Instead of dropping a video every day, what I'm going to start doing now is doing a first impressions video of a game that I start reviewing on the first day, possibly either the Thursday or the Saturday when the weekend article goes up, and then do a final summary which I'll embed in the review, which you'll be watching right now. So we're just going to continue off from where I managed to get in the game. I think I've been playing the game for quite a number of hours, to be honest. I get the impression I'm not that far through the game, despite the fact that I've spent a ton of time in it. Because there are so many... Oh god, I have to concentrate. This game requires marginal amounts of concentration. I spent an awful lot of time in the game, except I still haven't unlocked a lot of weapons in the shop, and some of the items in the shop cost more money than I could have possibly made in total at this point in the game. So I get the feeling there's either a lot of game content left to go, or I just haven't been doing enough of the side missions and the challenge missions to earn some currency to unlock it all. But basically, overall impressions are fantastic. This is literally the best Transformers game that has ever come out of the Transformers franchise since forever. I mean, the last Transformers game I played and enjoyed was on the PlayStation 2. That was okay. I don't remember the name of it. It was that sort of no-name generic nonsense. But yeah, this is absolutely fantastic. My only niggle is with the repetitiveness of the game's use of bosses. You'll very often find that a lot of the bosses in the game, you'll fight them far too many times for my tastes, which annoyed me a little bit. Like the first boss you face is Devastator or whatever. And you'll fight him a number of times, and then eventually you'll defeat him and unlock his weapons. But the game is very similar in a lot of cases across the board. You'll literally fight Starscream so many times you lose count, and that annoyed me. It felt like I was, because boss fights take 30 minutes or so just to kill some of the harder ones. And that's a lot of time to spend, often failing, trying to kill a boss that's particularly difficult. And it's a bit of a slap in the face when, after you've spent all of that time beating him, and you think you've beat him, and you've, punched your heart out to try and defeat him, and they've just gone, oh, he ran away. I understand that they can't exactly get rid of characters immediately because you've destroyed them, but I feel like the game is lacking an awful lot of closure for a lot of bosses, because you'll just find yourself playing against them about a dozen times, and it gets really annoying. And that was one thing particularly that annoyed me. The other thing I'm not 100% sure about is the item level ups, which are a little bit convoluted. Although that's my opinion, I often found myself thinking, oh, it feels like I'm wasting my time a bit, because there's tons and tons of weapons that I could be using. But I'm only sticking to a select few. Like, at most, I'd probably use about 5 or 6. Alright, let's just use this now. Getting on my nerves. And so a lot of the weapon drops, yes, there's a lot of variation in weapons and stuff like that, but you'll probably find yourself using the same ones for quite a number of levels. For example, I only ever use the Devastator drills most of the time. In fact, I think, yeah, I have them equipped on this guy right now. Just because I spent an awful lot trying to get some stats on them that I wanted. And so it feels like you miss out on an awful lot of the game's content because the upgrade system is a bit of a pain in the ass. Yes, it would be difficult to change it, but I feel like something would be better than what is currently here. But as far as negatives go, those two very small systems, which play a relatively large part in the game, I think, are my only downsides. The bosses are completely ridiculous and highly unique. Like every time you fight a boss, it will always be different. Um, all the bosses have crazy skills. Um, they all just feel completely different. And I was very impressed with the way that the whole game has just been designed. Combat feels excellent, if I do say so myself. Um, it's very, very challenging at times, I have to admit. And I've often found myself dying quite a lot to some of the more difficult bosses because, as is typical with these sort of brawlers, the boss can deal about a tenth of your damage, a tenth of your health in damage in one hit, and you do about 100th of their health in damage per hit. Um, so yeah, bosses take an extremely long time to kill, and you'll often find yourself getting absolutely slaughtered in the process. On one of the harder difficulties, I found myself fighting Starscream a number of times when he's going through the weird rainbow space gate thing back to Cybertron or whatever. And that was really hard because I ended up fighting him probably about 8 times. And again, this was like the 7th time I had fought Starscream, which was relatively annoying. But, you know, every time you face these bosses, they're always a little bit different in some way, which is quite good, I have to say. I like the fact that they've somehow managed to make almost everything in the game feel totally unique. There is car combat. All of these Transformers are totally different. This chap I've been using, I thought to myself, oh, am I going to find myself just using one Transformer because it feels better or more interesting than another? But I actually ended up using pretty much every single one of them, just because I enjoyed playing with them, because they all had certain things that were better than others. Like some had better car speed, some felt like they had a little bit better range damage or anything like that. And so I found myself, you know, trying out a lot of different guys simply because I wanted to and not because I felt like I had to for the sake of reviewing. So yeah, very, very impressed with the way that they've dealt with all these different characters. I have to say, it's pretty damn good. And the combat, I mean, it's very simplistic and quite repetitive, but it just feels good. I mean, I've got to say, you can tell that the guys that made this are the guys that made Revengeance, because the combat in that game was far more complex than in Transformers. I mean, you had all those crazy counters and all that stuff like that. I mean, this does have the same sort of a similar counter system where you jump out the way when you're avoiding attacks, and it slows down time, and that's your primary way of just avoiding damage at all costs. But Metal Gear Rising Revengeance, was a lot more complex than this, but I have to say I find both of them equally as fun. The combat system in this game is pretty good, I have to admit. It's very challenging, very simplistic despite its challenging nature, and it just feels nice. And you know that, you know, it's been so smoothed over that I feel like if I die, it's my fault and nothing to do with the game or to do with frame times or anything like that. I know that the game is doing what it's supposed to do, as opposed to causing me problems, which is pretty good. The number of enemies is very, very varied. The number of enemies is about the same as the number of unique bosses in this game, although I'm not far enough in to decide whether that's an accurate statement to make or not. But so far, I have frequently been surprised about this game. Basically, this game is not just a third-person sort of brawler-type title. You'll often find yourself doing like a side-scrolling segment, which was quite fun with the dinosaur because it made it look like some completely different game. You'll do some top-down stuff. There's even some turret sections knocking around with like some weird Space Invader pattern-based alien shooting stuff. It's hugely varied. There are so many different parts to this game that you'll often find yourself quite surprised at what it throws at you next. And, you know, it stays entertaining the whole way throughout, which is pretty difficult for a game of this type, considering the combat is pretty simple. It definitely does an excellent job at keeping you entertained. Oh, damn. Thank God this is Thundercracker. I thought it was Starscream, because Starscream is really, really hard to deal with. I hate it when they fly around. It's really annoying. There we go. Oh, it just feels good. And if you've got the Xbox controller, the the rumble makes the combat just feel even more correct. Oh, it feels great. I have to admit the combo system isn't as awesome as I expected it to be. Um, Obviously, like I said, it's quite a simplistic combat system, but I sort of expected a few more combos. Um, you can, of course, buy extra ones. Um, but some of them, like, I'll show you one in a second once that's finished. Oh, I got an S rank. Some of them are quite simplistic, so it's triple X, triple Y, XXY, stuff like that, and then you've got that move. And other than that, and this charged up, beat up thing, and this, which you very rarely get time to use because it's quite a slow charge up. Um, the combat is a little bit sort of, I don't know. I was hoping for a few more combos. Like in Batman, it manages to make tons and tons and tons of combos with quite a few sort of select buttons. Is this going to be the second time I've fought Megatron? I've already fought Megatron right at the start of the game. Oh no, I'm not. These are the Constructor bots or whatever the hell they were called. Who I also fought before. I've fought these guys several times. They all become Devastator, who I've also fought twice. So technically I fought him 3 times, if not more. And that's my main issue with this game, is the amount of times I have fought the same bosses over and over and over again. I mean, damn, that's irritating. It's really, really hard to counter these guys while talking. In fact, I might just quickly do an ulti on this. So yeah, it keeps on coming back to that same thing of I'm fighting the same bosses over and over again and they stop feeling special. But each and every single boss, as I said before, is pretty damn good. And despite the fact that the combat is extremely simplistic, you know when you're in the wrong, and it feels really, really awesome. So overall, I have extremely positive thoughts about this game. This has, by far, been one of the best games I've played all year, just because it is unapologetic, simplistic gaming. It's very similar to the Mad Max movie, in that it wasn't trying to win BAFTAs, it wasn't trying to win any magical awards for some ludicrous nature. It wasn't trying to be too artsy. It was just trying to be an entertaining film, and that's exactly what Transformers is. It is an entertaining game that hasn't got some very drastic, thought-provoking storyline. It's Transformers from the 80s with those same voice actors for some of the characters that just sound just as amazing as they did back in the day. And it's great. Like, I love what they've done with the game, and I think Platinum Games are probably one of the best brawler title developers I've ever played their titles of. I love Revengeance, and I love this. And I think this is a game that a lot of people are going to be talking about in the future, because whenever another Transformer game comes out, they won't be comparing it to The Fall of Cybertron or any of the other titles. I think every time there's a Transformers game that comes out in future, people will be inadvertently comparing it to this in the future, because this is probably the best Transformers media, not just game. I mean, in terms of media, this is way better than the newest films. I mean, you might quite like the films. I was not an overt fan of some of the later titles. The first one was okay, but this is the best representation of Transformers since the late 80s, early 90s, pretty much. It feels really great, and it was quite expensive on release, but I think it was well worth the money, to be honest. I think that's just how sort of Japanese brawler titles are in the market. So yeah, I can't possibly give you a reason not to play this. Even with the repetitive bosses and the slightly annoying nature of the item upgrades, there's still a tons of a ton of items, and if you're a min-maxer, you're gonna love it even more because you get to muck around with all of the different weapons and get all those stats that you really want. But for me, I don't like min-maxing in brawler games. It feels like something's wrong. But I love all of the Autobots, especially the dinosaur, and overall it's just a really great game. And I think I would challenge someone to tell me that they dislike this game. The only reason you could possibly hate this game is if you just generally hate Oh, look, it's Devastator again. Yeah, so this happens. The only difference is he tends to do a bit more damage or have more health or something silly like that. And that's annoying. I don't like it when games say, hey, you killed this boss once before, he got away, and now you're going to face him again, except you know how he's really easy beforehand, where you're going to fight the same boss again, except he's going to do more damage and have more health. Although, that said, I'm killing this guy just as easily as I did in the first place. This guy is actually surprisingly easy to kill. Starscream, oh man, that guy was tough. That guy was very tough. I'll finish up this boss battle and I think that'll be it. I think this is relatively well showcased, the combat in the game. Unfortunately, I haven't shown you the weapons, but this showcases the combat in the boss fight. But you can see that I've got a number of... Oh, damn. You can see that I've got a number of... Oh, god damn it. I've got that guy's sword. I fought him before. That's annoying. So I'm now fighting two of the same bosses again. That frustrates me somewhat. This is hectic. I literally have no idea what I'm doing. I can't see a thing. I'm just pressing buttons and praying I don't die. Repair kits. Right, time to use a power booster and use a defense booster. So these are pretty cool. These are a nice little mini addition to the game, which make it feel reasonably good. And it does feel particularly good when you successfully dodge, I have to say. I am overall impressed. I'm going to have to concentrate here. Literally, this is the worst possible boss fight to be commentating over. Oh, didn't even have to kill him. Oh, he's definitely dead now. There is no way in hell I'm fighting him again. No way. Except I'm sure they will find a way to randomly bring him back for no reason whatsoever. And my ulti charges up very quickly. I think it's because I have like a passive stat on my weapon that increases my ultimate power generation or whatever. I have this guy's sword as well as Devastator's drills, so I've literally taken their parts away from them that they apparently were still using at this stage. Luckily, they're just focusing on my friends instead of me, which is fortunate because there is no way I would have survived otherwise. I kind of wish I had played the Dinobot, to be honest. Hey, S rank, sweet. I've got to say, I love the looks of the original Autobots. It's just so much better than the ones that they give them in the new films. And then there's that cheesy intro and outro before all of the cutscenes. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there. So feel free to check the original article in the section below in the description of the video, and of course the performance analysis in the video below. And join us on Saturday for the Next Week in Gaming episode. So thanks for watching, guys, and hope you enjoy the review.